His wife walked into our office at 7:12 on a Monday morning. 2 minutes earlier, Major Daniel Reeves had texted me. "Don't look nervous today. Everything is fine." That was how he always talked to me. Calm. Certain. Like panic was something only other people felt. I was standing near the printer with a stack of training reports in my hands. My uniform felt too tight around my throat. My coffee had gone cold on my desk. Across the room, Daniel sat behind his computer, pretending to read an email. He had not looked at me once that morning. Not when I walked in. Not when I passed his desk. Not even when our fingers almost touched near the filing cabinet. That was when I knew something was wrong. I was 32 years old, a staff sergeant in the United States Army, stationed at Fort Carson. I had been through field exercises, inspections, divorce, and long nights where the only thing keeping me awake was black coffee and discipline. But nothing had trained me for the sound of that door opening. The woman who stepped inside did not look angry. That was the worst part. She wore a beige coat over dark jeans, with smooth brown hair tucked behind one ear. Her face was calm, almost too calm. She looked around the office like she had already been there 100 times in her mind. Then her eyes landed on me. Not on Daniel. On me. Major Reeves stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. "Melissa," he said. His voice cracked. That one crack told me more than any confession could have. Because Daniel never cracked. Not in briefings. Not during inspections. Not when soldiers made mistakes that could ruin an entire training schedule. He was always controlled, always polished, always one step ahead. But in that moment, he looked trapped. Melissa removed her sunglasses slowly. Then she looked at my name tape. Carter. Her eyes lifted back to my face. "You must be Emily," she said. The reports nearly slipped from my hands. I had never met this woman. I had never spoken to her. I had never sent her a message, called her number, or even seen a photo of her except the one Daniel kept turned slightly away on his desk. But she knew my first name. And she said it like she had been waiting to meet me. The whole office went silent. Someone stopped typing. Someone else cleared their throat, then froze. Daniel walked toward her, his voice low and sharp. "This is not the place." Melissa did not even look at him. "That's funny," she said. "You said that to the last one too." The last one. Those 3 words hit me harder than anything she could have yelled. My chest tightened, but my mind refused to understand it. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to laugh, deny it, say she was unstable like he had always claimed. But he said nothing, and in his silence, something inside me started to fall apart. 3 months earlier, I had thought he was saving me from loneliness. It started after a late planning meeting when everyone else had gone home. I was still fixing a readiness tracker under buzzing fluorescent lights. My divorce had been final for 6 months, and I hated going back to my empty apartment off post. Daniel came back with 2 coffees. He set one beside my keyboard. "You always stay later than everyone," he said. I smiled because I was tired, and because kindness felt dangerous when you had gone without it too long. Then he said, "That's what I admire about you." At first, it was just attention. A coffee. A quiet compliment. A message after work asking if I got home safe. Then he started telling me about his marriage. "It's over," he said one night outside headquarters. Snow was collecting on the hoods of parked trucks. His shoulders looked heavy, and his voice sounded almost broken. "We sleep in separate rooms," he told me. "She knows we're done." I should have asked why he still wore the ring. I should have asked why no divorce papers had been filed. I should have asked why a man with so much control needed so much secrecy. But I wanted to be chosen. That was the part one hated admitting later. The first kiss happened in his truck during freezing rain. He parked behind an empty admin building where nobody walked after dark. My heart pounded so loudly I barely heard the heater running. "This is complicated," I whispered. He touched my face gently. "It won't be complicated much longer," he said. For 3 months, I lived inside that promise. He told me not to tell anyone because people loved gossip. He saved my number under logistics update. He said he deleted our messages to protect me. He said his wife was emotional, unpredictable, and willing to destroy his career. I believed every word because believing him hurt less than questioning him. Then, on that Monday morning, his wife opened her purse. She pulled out a thick folder and placed it on my desk. My name was written on the front. Not typed. Written by hand. Daniel stepped forward. "Melissa, stop." She finally turned to him. "No," she said. "She deserves to know the script." Then she opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, dates, hotel receipts, and photos of women I had never seen before. At the top of the first page was my picture. A photo of me walking out of headquarters 2 weeks earlier. Under it, in blue ink, Melissa had written one sentence. "He is doing it again." My picture was printed in color. I was walking out of headquarters with my patrol cap in one hand and my phone in the other. I remembered that day. Daniel had told me not to wait for him near the parking lot because someone might notice. I had felt disappointed. Now I felt sick. Melissa turned the page slowly, like she wanted me to absorb every second. There was a hotel receipt from Colorado Springs. 2 coffee shop transactions. A screenshot of Daniel texting me. "I miss you already. Be patient with me." My face burned so badly I could barely breathe. That message had felt tender when I first read it. I had saved it, reread it, even smiled at it in bed like some foolish teenager. Seeing it printed in his wife's folder made it look dirty. Small. Almost rehearsed. Daniel reached for the papers, but Melissa pulled them back. "Don't," she said. Her voice stayed quiet. That made it worse. If she had screamed, I could have told myself she was unstable. I could have held on to the version of her Daniel had painted for me. Emotional. Bitter. Dangerous. A woman who refused to let go. But Melissa did not look dangerous. She looked tired. And prepared. Captain Harris stepped out of his office at the end of the hall. "What's going on here?" he asked. Nobody answered at first. I looked at Daniel. He looked at Melissa. Melissa looked at me. Then she said, "Your major has been using his position to pursue women under his command." The air changed immediately. Military offices have their own kind of silence. It is not empty. It is loaded. Every person in that room understood what those words meant. Rank. Power. Conduct. Consequences. Daniel's face went pale. "That is not true," he said. But his voice had lost its shape. Captain Harris looked at me. "Staff Sergeant Carter, step into my office." My legs did not move. I stared at the folder on my desk. There were tabs inside it, divided by names. Not just mine. Other names. Other dates. Other women. Some pages had photos. Some had printed emails. Some had handwritten notes. I saw one tab marked Rachel. Another marked Tanya. Then I saw a third tab marked Megan Fort Bliss. My throat tightened. This had not started with me. That was the first truth that cut through the fog. Daniel had told me I was different. He had said I understood him in a way nobody else did. He had told me he could talk to me because I was strong, calm, and not dramatic like his wife. Now I realized something awful. Maybe he told every woman the same thing. Captain Harris repeated my name, softer this time. "Staff Sergeant Carter." I stepped away from the desk, but Melissa touched my sleeve. Not hard. Just enough to stop me. "I know you probably hate me right now," she said. I did not know what I felt. Hate was too simple. Shame was closer. Fear was underneath it. And beneath that was a humiliating need for Daniel to say something that made all of this less real. But he just stood there, jaw tight, eyes cold. Not sad. Not sorry. Cold. That was the moment I saw him clearly for the first time. I followed Captain Harris into his office. He closed the door, but not all the way. Through the narrow gap, I could still see Daniel talking low to Melissa. His hands moved like he was negotiating a training issue. Like this was a scheduling conflict. Like his wife had inconvenienced him. Captain Harris sat behind his desk and folded his hands. "Carter," he said, "I need you to tell me whether there was a personal relationship." My mouth went dry. Every answer felt dangerous. If I lied, I protected the man who had lied to me. If I told the truth, I might destroy my own career. I had worked hard for that uniform. I had built myself back up after my divorce. The Army had given me structure when my life felt scattered and embarrassing. I was proud of my rank. Proud that people trusted me. And now, because I had believed the wrong man, everything felt contaminated. Captain Harris waited. He did not rush me. That made me want to cry. Yes, I said finally. There was. His expression did not change. Was he your direct superior? I looked at the floor. Yes. Did you feel pressured? That question broke something open in me. Because the honest answer was complicated. Daniel had never ordered me into his truck. He had never threatened me. He had never said my evaluation depended on him. But power does not always speak loudly. Sometimes it just sits there, wearing a wedding ring, giving you special attention, making you feel chosen by someone who can also damage you. I don't know, I whispered. Captain Harris nodded once. Did he ask you to keep it secret? I thought of his contact name in my phone. Logistics update. Yes. Did he tell you his marriage was ending? My eyes filled. Yes. Captain Harris leaned back slightly, and his face hardened. Before he could ask another question, shouting erupted outside. Not from Melissa. From Daniel. You had no right to bring this here. His voice carried through the door. Then Melissa answered, still calm enough to scare me. You brought her into our marriage. You brought this into your command. A chair scraped against the floor. Someone told Daniel to lower his voice. Captain Harris stood and opened the door. That was when I saw Melissa holding up another page. This one was not from my messages. It was a signed statement. At the top, I saw a name I recognized. Sergeant Megan Willis. She had transferred from our unit 2 years earlier. Everyone had said she left because she wanted a fresh start. Melissa looked straight at me through the doorway. Then she said the words that made my knees weaken. Ask him why Megan really left. Ask him why Megan really left. Melissa's words hung in the doorway like smoke. For 1 second, nobody moved. Captain Harris stood beside me, his hand still on the office door. Daniel was in the middle of the room, breathing hard, his face no longer calm. The perfect officer, the man who always knew what to say, suddenly looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. I had heard Megan Willis's name before. Everyone had. She had been a sergeant in our unit 2 years earlier. Smart, quiet, sharp with logistics, the kind of soldier who never drew attention to herself unless the work demanded it. I had only met her once during turnover, but people talked about her like she had simply burned out. They said she requested a transfer. They said she needed a different environment. They said she had personal issues. Now I understood something cold and ugly. Maybe personal issues was just the polite army way of burying a woman's pain. Daniel pointed at Melissa. You don't know what you're talking about. But he did not sound angry anymore. He sounded scared. Melissa opened the folder again. Her fingers were steady, but I noticed the small tremble in her wrist. She was not enjoying this. She had not come there to perform. She had come there because silence had finally cost too much. She pulled out 3 printed pages and handed them to Captain Harris. He read the first one without speaking. Then his face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. His eyes sharpened and his jaw locked. Major Reeves, he said, you need to step into the conference room. Daniel looked around the office. Everyone was watching now, even the people pretending not to. His whole career was standing there with him. His rank. His reputation. His polished speeches about integrity. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Instead, he adjusted his uniform blouse like that could still save him. Then he walked into the conference room. Captain Harris turned to another NCO and said, close the main door. No one leaves until I say so. My stomach dropped. This was no longer just an affair. This was an investigation beginning in real time. Melissa remained near my desk, her hands folded over her purse. I wanted to hate her because it would have been easier. I wanted her to be cruel, dramatic, unstable, all the things Daniel had called her. But she looked like a woman who had cried so much at home that she had no tears left for public places. I stepped closer without meaning to. What happened to Megan? I asked. Melissa looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, he made her believe she was the only one. My throat tightened. That was my sentence. My private sentence. The one Daniel had whispered against my hair in his truck. "You're the only person I can breathe around." I had carried those words like proof. Now they felt copied and pasted. Melissa continued, softer now. She was under him too. Different section, same chain of influence. He told her our marriage was dead. Told her I was unstable. Told her she had to stay quiet because people would blame her. My skin prickled. Every word matched my life. Not exactly, but close enough to make me dizzy. He said she got obsessed, I whispered. Melissa's mouth twisted. Yes, that's what he tells people after. After. That word opened another door in my mind. After he uses you. After you ask questions. After you become inconvenient. After you stop making him feel powerful. I gripped the edge of my desk because the room felt tilted. I remembered Daniel correcting my evaluation draft, leaning close enough for his sleeve to brush mine. I remembered him telling me I was too good for my ex-husband. I remembered him saying women like me were rare in the army because we did not need saving. Except he had been saving me on purpose. From a fire he was quietly building around me. Captain Harris came out of the conference room 10 minutes later. His expression was tight. "Staff Sergeant Carter," he said, "I need your phone." My first instinct was panic. Not because I had done something criminal. Because my phone held the version of me I was ashamed to see. The late-night messages. The photos I should not have sent. The texts where I called him Daniel instead of Major Reeves. The desperate little replies where I kept asking when things would change. I pulled it from my pocket with shaking hands. Daniel appeared behind Captain Harris, standing inside the conference room doorway. His eyes locked onto mine. For the first time that morning, he looked directly at me. And somehow, after everything, part of me still wanted comfort from him. That frightened me more than the folder. Because manipulation does not end the moment truth arrives. Sometimes your heart keeps reaching for the person who poisoned it. Daniel's voice softened. "Emily, don't do this." Not Staff Sergeant Carter. Emily. He knew exactly which version of me to call. The room went still again. Captain Harris turned toward him. "Major, do not address her." But Daniel kept looking at me. "You know what we had," he said. "You know I cared about you." There it was. The hook. The same soft voice. The same wounded eyes. The same pressure wrapped in tenderness. A week earlier, those words would have broken me. That morning, they almost did. Then Melissa opened the folder to one last page and turned it toward me. It was a screenshot from 2 years earlier. A message from Daniel to Megan. "You know what we have. You know I care about you." Same words. Same punctuation. Same lie. My hand tightened around my phone. Something inside me went quiet. Not healed. Not strong. Just quiet enough to choose. I unlocked the screen and gave Captain Harris my passcode. Daniel's face changed completely. The softness vanished. His eyes went flat, almost cruel. And in that instant, I understood why Melissa had come. Not to humiliate me. Not to expose me. To interrupt the script before I reached the ending Megan had reached. Captain Harris took my phone and placed it into an evidence bag. Then he looked at me with a voice much lower than before. "Carter, there's one more thing you need to know." I could barely speak. "What?" He glanced toward the conference room, then back at me. Megan filed a complaint before she transferred. My pulse pounded in my ears. "And?" I asked. Captain Harris looked at the floor for half a second. Then he said, "It disappeared." It disappeared. For a few seconds, I did not understand the sentence. A complaint did not just disappear. Not in a system built on forms, signatures, emails, and tracking numbers. Not when every missing helmet got documented like national treasure. Not when every training accident created a paper trail thick enough to stop a door. But Captain Harris was not guessing. His face told me that. "Megan filed it through the proper channel," he said quietly. "At least, that's what her statement says." I looked through the glass wall toward the conference room. Daniel was standing with his arms crossed. His face had gone blank again. That polished mask was back, but now I knew what lived underneath it. Cold calculation. Careful timing. A man who knew exactly which rules mattered and which people could be bent. Melissa stepped closer to the office door. She sent me a copy, she said. I turned toward her. You knew Megan? Melissa nodded, but her eyes stayed on Daniel. Not at first. She found me after he started calling her unstable. My stomach twisted. That word again. Unstable. He had used it like a weapon wrapped in concern. He had said Melissa was unstable when she questioned him. He had said Megan was unstable after she left. He had said his wife might ruin his career because she could not accept the marriage was over. And I had believed him. Not because the story made sense. Because it made me feel innocent. Captain Harris handed the papers to another officer who had entered the room. I recognized her as Lieutenant Colonel Mason, our battalion commander. Her presence changed everything. The office straightened without anyone giving an order. She looked at me first, then at Melissa, then at Daniel. Major Reeves, she said, you are relieved of duties pending review. The room went silent. Daniel's mouth opened slightly. Ma'am, this is a domestic issue. No, she said. It is not. Her voice was calm, but it cut straight through him. This involves subordinates, possible misconduct, and a prior complaint that may have been mishandled. For the first time, Daniel looked truly shaken. Not heartbroken. Not sorry. Shaken because power was moving away from him. That was different. I stood there with my hands at my sides, feeling smaller than my uniform. I wanted to disappear. Every person in that office knew enough to guess the rest. The whispers would start by lunch. Maybe earlier. Staff Sergeant Carter. The one involved with Major Reeves. The divorced one. The stupid one. The one who should have known better. Shame can make you want to protect the person who caused it. That is the ugliest part. For one brief second, I wanted to say it was all a misunderstanding. I wanted to take my phone back, close the folder, and let Daniel explain it away. Not because I trusted him. Because I did not want to become a lesson. Then Melissa touched the edge of my desk and said something almost too soft to hear. He counts on that. I looked at her. He counts on you being too ashamed to speak. That sentence landed harder than the folder. Because she was right. Daniel had not only chosen lonely women. He had chosen women with something to lose. A reputation. A rank. A fresh start. A reason to stay quiet. Megan had wanted a clean career. I had wanted to rebuild after divorce. Melissa had wanted to protect her family from public humiliation. Different women. Same trap. Lieutenant Colonel Mason ordered Daniel to surrender his government phone and leave the building with an escort. He tried to keep his posture perfect, but I saw the anger in his hands. His fingers flexed once, then curled. As he passed my desk, he stopped. Not fully. Just enough. His eyes found mine. For half a second, I saw the man from the truck. The one who brought coffee. The one who said I was rare. The one who knew exactly where I was wounded and pressed his thumb there gently. Then he whispered, "You'll regret this." Nobody else seemed to hear it. But Melissa did. Her head snapped toward him. Lieutenant Colonel Mason turned sharply. "Major Reeves," she said, "keep walking." He did. And when the door closed behind him, the office felt like air returning after a storm. But I was not relieved. I was terrified. Because the worst part was not that he lied. The worst part was realizing how many people may have helped him stay protected. Captain Harris asked Melissa to provide everything she had. She agreed immediately, then opened another section of the folder. That was when I saw names I recognized. Not women this time. Men. Senior NCOs. An old company commander. A civilian HR contact. Each name had notes beside it. Dates. Meetings. Calls. Emails. My mouth went dry. "What is this?" I asked. Melissa looked at Lieutenant Colonel Mason. Then she looked at me. "This is who Megan said she told." Nobody spoke. My skin went cold from my neck to my wrists. This was not just Daniel having affairs. This was bigger. This was a man protected by silence, friendship, convenience, and fear. A man who understood the system well enough to hide inside it. A man who made women look emotional while he looked professional. I actually whispered it out loud. "This is insane." Melissa nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "That's exactly what I said too." Lieutenant Colonel Mason took the page from the folder. Her expression did not change much, but her voice did. Captain Harris, secure this office. I want statements from everyone present. Then she turned to me. Staff Sergeant Carter, you will not discuss this with anyone outside official channels. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. But my voice barely came out. She studied my face. This is going to feel personal, she said. But from this point forward, it is also evidence. Evidence. That word made my heart sink. My love story had become evidence. My texts were evidence. My shame was evidence. My loneliness was evidence. Everything I had protected because I thought it was private was now part of a pattern. Melissa closed the folder but kept one hand on top of it. I looked at her and finally asked the question that had been growing inside me since she walked in. Why did you come for me? Her face softened for the first time. Because Megan begged me not to let him do it again. I could not breathe. Melissa swallowed hard. She said the next woman might not survive it the way she did. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed inside the evidence bag. Captain Harris glanced down. The screen lit up with a new message. From Daniel's private number. Do not trust Melissa. She ruined Megan too. Do not trust Melissa. She ruined Megan too. The message lit up inside the evidence bag like a match in a dark room. For a second, nobody moved. My phone was sealed in clear plastic on Captain Harris's desk. The screen glowed through it, bright and ugly, with Daniel's name hidden behind the fake contact he had made me use. Logistics update. That name suddenly felt humiliating. Like I had helped him hide me. Captain Harris read the message once, then looked at Lieutenant Colonel Mason. She did not touch the phone. She only leaned closer, her face still and unreadable. Document the time, she said. Captain Harris wrote it down. 7:49 a.m. 37 minutes after Melissa walked into the office, Daniel was already trying to separate me from the only woman who had brought proof. That was when I understood something new. He was not panicking. He was adapting. Even after losing his office, his phone, and his command authority, he still knew exactly which button to press. He knew I was ashamed. He knew I wanted a villain outside myself. He knew if he could make Melissa look dangerous, I might doubt everything again. And the worst part was, it almost worked. I looked at Melissa. Her face had gone pale, but not surprised. You see, she whispered. I hated how tired she sounded. Lieutenant Colonel Mason turned toward her. Mrs. Reeves, has he sent messages like this before? Melissa let out a small laugh with no humor in it. To me? To Megan? To the women before her. She looked down at the folder. Yes, ma'am. That's usually phase 2. Phase 2. The phrase made my stomach twist. Because if there was a phase 2, then there had been a phase 1. Maybe even a phase 3. Maybe everything Daniel had done with me had a place in a sequence he understood better than I ever had. Coffee after work. Marriage confession. Secret contact name. Private meetings. Deleted messages. Blame the wife. Call the last woman unstable. Make the new woman feel chosen. Then, when exposed, turn every woman against the other. I sat down because my knees felt weak. The chair was cold under me. My hands shook in my lap, and I stared at the floor tiles like they could hold me in place. Captain Harris crouched slightly, lowering his voice. Carter, are you able to continue? I nodded too quickly. Yes, sir. But inside, I was splitting apart. Part of me was still Staff Sergeant Carter, trained to answer clearly, stay composed, and follow orders. Another part was just Emily, a woman who had kissed a married officer in a truck and believed every word he said because loneliness had made her reckless. I had never felt both so guilty and so used. Melissa sat across from me. Not close enough to comfort me. Not far enough to abandon me. I know what you're thinking, she said. I looked up. No, you don't. Her eyes softened. You're thinking you should have known. My throat tightened. I said nothing. You're thinking this makes you weak, she continued. And you're thinking if people find out, they'll only see the affair, not what he did around it. My eyes burned. Because that was exactly it. That was the part no training manual prepared you for. People loved simple stories. Good woman. Bad woman. Cheating husband. Angry wife. Foolish mistress. But real damage was rarely that clean. Daniel had built a whole room of mirrors, then blamed women for getting lost inside it. Lieutenant Colonel Mason stepped into the hallway to make a call. I heard words through the door. IG. Legal. Formal inquiry. Prior complaint. My heart pounded harder with each one. This was becoming official. There would be statements, interviews, questions, timelines. Someone would ask me where we met, what we said, when it became physical. Someone would read my messages and decide how much of my own destruction I had agreed to. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. Captain Harris placed a blank statement form in front of me. Start from the beginning, he said. Use dates if you remember them. I picked up the pen. For a moment, I could not write. The beginning. What was the beginning? The coffee? The first text? The first time he said his marriage was over? Or the first time I ignored the feeling in my chest that told me secrecy was not the same as protection? I wrote my name. SSG Emily Carter. Then my hand stopped again. Melissa reached into her purse and pulled out a small folded note. She placed it beside my form. This helped Megan, she said. Maybe it will help you too. I unfolded it slowly. It was not dramatic. Not poetic. Just one sentence, written in blue ink. Tell the truth before shame tells it for you. I stared at those words until they blurred. Then I began writing. I wrote about the late meeting. The coffee. The messages after duty hours. The truck behind the admin building. The way he said his marriage was just paperwork. The way he asked me to save his number under a fake name. The way he told me Melissa was unstable. The way he said Megan had become obsessed. Every sentence felt like pulling glass from my own skin. But once I started, I could not stop. Around noon, my first sergeant arrived. By then, the office had changed from a workplace into a crime scene without yellow tape. People moved carefully. Voices stayed low. Nobody made eye contact for long. My first sergeant looked at me with a face I could not read. Carter, he said, you need to come with me. My stomach dropped. Am I in trouble? He paused. That pause almost broke me. You're part of an investigation, he said. That means you need to protect yourself too. Protect myself. I had spent 3 months protecting Daniel. Now I had to learn what protection actually meant. He took me to a separate room near legal. It smelled like paper, old coffee, and floor cleaner. I sat under a wall clock that ticked too loudly while a legal officer explained my rights, the process, and what could happen next. Some words passed over me like weather. Misconduct. Fraternization. Coercion. Command influence. Pattern of behavior. Then the legal officer said something that made me look up. There may be more women. I gripped the edge of the chair. How many? She did not answer right away. That told me enough. Later that afternoon, I was allowed to leave for the day. Not cleared. Not finished. Just released from the building that no longer felt like mine. The parking lot looked painfully normal. Snow sat along the curb in dirty piles. Soldiers crossed between buildings carrying folders and coffee cups. Somewhere nearby, a truck backed up with a sharp beep, beep, beep. Life kept moving while mine cracked open. Melissa was standing near her car. I almost walked past her. Then I stopped. Did you hate me? I asked. She looked at me for a long time. At first, she said. I nodded because I deserved that answer. Then she added, but then I read your messages. My face burned. She looked away toward the mountains. You sounded like I sounded 8 years ago. That sentence hurt more than hate would have. Before I could answer, a black SUV pulled into the lot. Daniel was in the passenger seat. For one breath, our eyes met through the windshield. He did not look broken. He looked furious. Then his window lowered just enough for me to hear him. You have no idea what you just started, Emily. The SUV drove away before anyone could react. Melissa stepped closer to me, her voice barely above a whisper. That's phase 3. That's phase 3. Melissa said it so quietly I almost missed it. The black SUV was already turning out of the parking lot. Daniel did not look back, but I still felt his eyes on me. That was the strange thing about fear. Sometimes the person leaves, and your body keeps reacting like they are still standing close. I looked at Melissa. What does that mean? She held her car keys tight in one hand. It means he stops trying to charm you, she said, and starts trying to scare you. A cold pressure spread through my chest. For 3 months, Daniel had made me feel protected. He walked me to my car after late meetings. He checked if I got home safely. He told me I deserved a man who noticed the small things. Now I realized he had only been studying them. My routines, my weak spots, my shame, my silence. That evening, I went back to my apartment off-post and locked the door twice. The place looked exactly the same, but nothing felt safe. My boots sat by the entryway. My laundry basket was half full. A mug from the night before was still in the sink. Normal life had become insulting. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my phone. Not my real phone. That was still evidence. This was an old backup phone from a drawer. I turned it on because I needed to call my sister. I needed one person outside the unit to remind me I was not disappearing. But before I could dial, messages started coming through social media. Not from Daniel. From strangers. Homewrecker. You knew he was married. Women like you ruin good men. My hands went numb. There were no names, no profile photos, just empty accounts and cruel little sentences. One message had a photo of my apartment building. Another had a screenshot from my old wedding page, with my ex-husband cropped halfway out. That was when I understood. Daniel had not only threatened me, he had started. I called my sister, Rachel, and when she answered, I broke before saying hello. She lived in Arizona and had never liked the army. She thought it swallowed people and returned them with better posture and worse sleep. But that night, she did not judge me. She just listened. When I finished, she said, "Emily, you need to tell legal immediately." I know. No, she said. Not tomorrow. Now. So I did. Within an hour, I was sitting in a small room on base, wearing civilian clothes and feeling like a witness to my own bad choices. The legal officer photographed every message. Captain Harris arrived soon after, his face darker than before. "Did you share your address with him?" he asked. I nodded slowly. He picked me up once. Captain Harris closed his eyes for half a second. Not angry at me. Angry for me. "We'll document everything," he said. "And you need to stop reading the messages." That sounded simple. It was not. Because shame is addictive in the ugliest way. You keep checking who hates you, like maybe the next insult will finally explain what you deserve. The next morning, I was moved temporarily to another section. Officially, it was to preserve the investigation. Unofficially, it was because everyone knew the office had become poisonous. Some people avoided my eyes. A few were kind. One female sergeant from supply left a coffee on my desk and said nothing. That almost made me cry. By lunch, the rumors had changed 3 times. First, I had seduced him. Then Melissa had staged everything. Then Daniel was the victim of a revenge plot. Nobody mentioned Megan. That bothered me most. A woman's pain could vanish so quickly when a man had enough rank. That afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Mason called me in. Her office was quiet, neat, and colder than I expected. She did not smile, but she did not look at me like I was dirty either. "Carter," she said, "I need to ask you something directly." I sat straighter. "Yes, ma'am." "Did Major Reeves ever imply your career could benefit from staying close to him?" I opened my mouth, then stopped. Because again, the answer was not simple. Daniel had never said, "Sleep with me and I'll protect you." He was smarter than that. But he had reviewed my evaluation draft after our first kiss. He had told me he could help me get a school slot. He had said I had leadership potential, while his hand rested on my lower back in an empty hallway. I swallowed hard. He never said it plainly, I said. But he made me feel like his approval mattered more than it should. Lieutenant Colonel Mason wrote that down. Then she looked up. "That matters." 2 words. That matters. I did not know how badly I needed to hear them. Later, I met Melissa in the parking lot near Legal. Not because anyone told us to. We just ended up there, 2 women standing in the cold beside cars we did not enter. She looked exhausted. "He's sending people after you," I said. She nodded. "He did the same to Megan." "Did it stop?" Melissa looked toward the mountains. Not until she stopped hiding. I knew what she meant before she said more. Megan had survived by becoming visible, by refusing to let whispers be the only record. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote a clean timeline for investigators. Not emotional, not dramatic. Just dates, places, messages, names, details. Every moment I had tried to forget became a line. Then I added one more section. Things Daniel said about Melissa. Things Daniel said about Megan. Things Daniel said when I questioned him. The repetition was horrifying. Same phrases. Same warnings. Same little hooks. When I finished, it was almost 3 a.m. I sat in the dark, staring at the document, and felt something shift. I was still ashamed. Still scared. Still unsure what would happen to my career. But I was no longer protecting the lie. The next morning, I handed the timeline to Lieutenant Colonel Mason. She read the first page, then the second. Her face changed when she reached the repeated phrases. "Carter," she said slowly, "where did you get this wording?" "From my messages," I said. She opened a folder on her desk and pulled out another statement. Then she turned it toward me. It was Megan's. Halfway down the page, I saw the same sentence Daniel had sent me. "Be patient with me. Everything is almost over." My stomach dropped. Lieutenant Colonel Mason tapped the page once. Then she said, "Emily, we found another complaint." "Emily, we found another complaint." Lieutenant Colonel Mason said it carefully, like she knew one more truth might split me open. I stared at Megan's statement on the desk. Daniel's words sat there in black ink, almost identical to mine. The same promise. The same patience. The same soft little cage. "Another complaint from Megan?" I asked. Mason shook her head. "No. From someone else." The room seemed to shrink around me. For a second, all I heard was the heater clicking near the wall. My fingers went cold, and I pressed them against my knees to stop them shaking. "Who?" I whispered. Mason paused. "I can't give you her name yet." "Yet?" That word told me she was close. Not some woman from years ago. Not someone long gone from another post. Someone nearby. Someone still reachable. Someone Daniel may still have influence over. My stomach turned. "She's here, isn't she?" Mason did not answer directly. But her silence was enough. I walked out of her office with my timeline folder pressed to my chest. The hallway looked too bright. Soldiers passed me like nothing had changed. Boots squeaked on the polished floor. Phones rang behind closed doors. Somewhere, someone laughed. I wanted to scream. How could ordinary sounds keep happening around something this ugly? That afternoon, I saw Daniel for the first time since the parking lot. He was across the courtyard, walking beside a senior officer I did not know. He was no longer in charge of our section, but he still wore the same uniform. Still held his head high. Still looked like a man people might trust if they did not know better. Then he saw me. He did not smile. He just looked at me long enough to remind me he could still exist in my world. My body reacted before my mind did. My chest tightened. My hands went damp. For one horrible second, I felt like I had done something wrong simply by standing there. Then a voice behind me said, "Don't let him see you shrink." I turned. It was Sergeant First Class Barnes from Supply. She was older than me, maybe 45, with tired eyes and the kind of calm that came from surviving more than she discussed. She handed me a folder. "You left this in legal," she said. I had not. I knew I had not. But when I opened it, there was a sticky note inside. "You are not the only one. Keep going." I looked up quickly. Barnes was already walking away. My heart pounded. That evening, I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes before driving home. Snow had started falling again, soft and slow across the windshield. I watched it melt into little trails and thought about every woman who had sat alone after Daniel. Megan. Melissa. The unnamed complaint. Maybe more. For the first time, my shame started changing shape. It was still there, but anger was growing beside it. Not loud anger. Clear anger. The kind that makes you stop begging for someone to explain why they hurt you. The next day, investigators asked me to review a packet of screenshots. They warned me first. They said some messages might be upsetting. I almost laughed because everything was already upsetting. Then I saw them. Daniel's messages to another woman. He had used a different nickname. A different excuse. A different version of the same broken marriage story. But the rhythm was identical. You're the only person who understands me. My wife knows it's over. We have to be careful because people twist things. I felt something inside me go still. Not numb this time. Certain. He has a pattern, I said. The investigator looked up. Yes, she said. That is what we are documenting. A pattern. That word mattered. It meant I was not a random mistake. Megan was not a misunderstanding. Melissa was not a bitter wife. We were not separate women with separate shame. We were connected by the same script. Later that week, I was called into a formal interview. A legal officer sat across from me. Another person took notes. My statement was recorded. I wore my uniform because I needed to remember who I was before Daniel made me feel small. They asked when the relationship started. They asked what he said about his wife. They asked whether he discussed my evaluations. They asked if I feared retaliation. That question made my throat tighten. Yes, I said. My voice shook, but I did not stop. I was afraid he would make me look unstable, or dishonest, or like I chased him. The officer nodded. Did he ever use those words about other women? I looked down at my hands. Yes. Then I said their names. Melissa. Megan. The others I had heard whispered but never understood. Speaking them felt like opening locked doors. When the interview ended, I sat alone in the hallway. My whole body felt drained, like I had marched for miles with no pack and still carried weight. Melissa texted me from a new number that afternoon. Megan agreed to speak again. I stared at the message for a long time. Then another one came through. She asked if you would meet her. My breath caught. I had imagined Megan as a warning, a shadow, a name in a folder. But she was real. A woman who had lived through the ending I was still afraid of. We met 2 days later at a diner outside Colorado Springs. Melissa came with her. Megan sat in the back booth, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. She looked younger than I expected, but tired in a way age did not explain. When I sat across from her, I could barely speak. I'm sorry, I said. Megan looked at me for a long moment. Then she shook her head. He makes us apologize to each other, she said. That's part of it. Those words almost broke me. Because she was right. I had been ready to apologize for existing in the wreckage he created. Megan leaned closer. Listen to me, Emily. He will not stop because he feels guilty. He will stop only when the truth becomes louder than his rank. I swallowed hard. What happened when you filed? Her eyes moved to Melissa, then back to me. I trusted the wrong person with the complaint. The diner noise faded. Forks, coffee cups, soft music overhead. Everything blurred except Megan's face. Who? I asked. She opened her purse and pulled out a folded paper. It was an email chain. Old, printed, marked with dates. At the top was a name from Melissa's folder. A senior NCO still assigned to our battalion. Megan tapped the signature block. I gave it to him, she said. And 2 days later, Daniel knew everything. I gave it to him, Megan said. And 2 days later, Daniel knew everything. I stared at the email chain on the diner table. The senior NCO's name sat there in clean black letters. I had seen him in briefings. I had watched him laugh with Daniel near the coffee machine. I had once heard him call Daniel one of the good ones. Now his name looked different. Not powerful. Not respected. Just exposed. Melissa reached across the table and touched Megan's wrist. Megan did not cry. That somehow made it worse. She spoke like someone who had already spent all her tears alone, in a place where nobody came looking. After Daniel found out, everything changed, Megan said. People stopped inviting me into conversations. My schedule got worse. My work got questioned. Then someone said I seemed emotional. I closed my eyes for a second. Emotional. Unstable. Obsessed. Different words, same purpose. Make the woman look unreliable before she can be believed. Megan pushed the paper toward me. I kept copies because I knew one day he would do it again. Her voice broke on the last word. That was when the waitress came by with coffee, and all 3 of us went silent. She smiled politely, unaware she was standing beside 3 women connected by the same man's lies. After she left, Melissa looked at me. You need to give this to Mason. I nodded. This time, I did not hesitate. The next morning, I walked into Lieutenant Colonel Mason's office with Megan's email chain in my hand. My stomach still twisted, but my voice stayed steady. She trusted the wrong person, I said. And Daniel found out. Mason read every page. By the final email, her expression had gone hard. "Leave this with me," she said. Then she looked directly at me. "Carter, you did the right thing bringing this forward." I wanted those words to fix me. They did not. But they gave me something solid to stand on. Over the next few weeks, everything moved slowly, and then suddenly, investigators interviewed Megan again. Melissa gave another statement. Other women came forward, some with messages, some with memories, some with nothing, but the same phrases Daniel had used on me. That was the part nobody sees from outside. Truth is not one dramatic moment. It is paperwork. It is waiting. It is repeating painful details to strangers. It is walking into rooms where people already heard your name. It is choosing not to disappear when disappearing feels easier. Daniel was formally removed from his position. The senior NCO who buried Megan's complaint was investigated too. I never learned every detail. The Army does not hand you a clean ending tied with ribbon. Some decisions happened behind closed doors. Some names stayed protected longer than they should have. But Daniel was gone from our unit. That mattered. The first morning I walked into the office after his removal, nobody clapped. Nobody gave speeches. The fluorescent lights still buzzed. The printer still jammed. Someone still complained about missing signatures on a training packet. Life did not become cinematic. It simply became breathable again. Not easy, just breathable. Some people still whispered. A few looked at me like I had ruined something. Others quietly changed around me. They spoke more carefully. They asked better questions. They stopped laughing when someone called a woman crazy without proof. That was not justice. But it was movement. Months later, Megan came back to Fort Carson for a formal interview. I met her outside legal, where the wind cut between buildings and carried dust across the sidewalk. She looked stronger than she had in the diner. Not healed. Stronger. Melissa arrived a few minutes later with 2 coffees and handed one to Megan. For a moment, we just stood there, 3 women who should never have had to know each other. Then Megan looked at me and smiled faintly. "You stopped running from it," she said. I almost laughed. I wanted to. We all did. That stayed with me. Because the truth was, I had not become brave overnight. I was still ashamed of my choices. I still hated remembering that truck. I still hated that part of me had once waited for Daniel's messages like they were oxygen. But shame stopped owning the whole story. I had made a mistake. A serious one. I had ignored the ring, the secrecy, the fake contact name, and the convenient sad story about a dead marriage. I had wanted to be chosen so badly that I forgot to ask whether the choice was honest. But Daniel's manipulation was real too. Both things could be true. That was the hardest lesson. One evening, almost a year later, I found the old folded note Melissa had given me. "Tell the truth before shame tells it for you." I kept it inside a small box with my deployment patch, my divorce papers, and the first award I ever earned in uniform. Not because I wanted to remember Daniel. Because I wanted to remember who I became after him. I stayed in the Army. Not forever, maybe. But long enough to prove to myself that one man's lies did not get to steal everything I had built. And when a younger soldier came into my office months later, asking for advice about a married officer who said his wife didn't understand him, I felt the room go quiet inside me. I did not shame her. I did not lecture her. I just closed the door, pushed a box of tissues across the desk, and said the words I once needed someone to say to me. Start from the beginning. And don't leave out the parts that scare you. She looked down at her hands. Then she started talking. And for the first time in a long time, I understood something clearly. The story did not end when Daniel left. It ended when his script stopped working.